Mind the gap. Mind the gap. This is like a mantra that you hear when you are boarding one of the underground railway cars in London, the famous tube. Every couple of minutes or so, you hear this mantra, mind the gap. And it's written on the walls. And of course, it's said with a very refined English accent, which I cannot emulate. However, it does catch your attention. Mind the gap. And it's a very appropriate safety message, right? Why? Because there is a gap between the platform and the railway car. And if you are rushed to board, or if you are rushed to get off the train to get onto either your next station or your job or what have you, you could miss the gap and you could fall, break your toe, break your ankle, push the next rider off the platform, etc. There are some safety implications to that. You could harm yourself or harm another person. So mind the gap. And there is another gap that we should mind as well for our own safety and the safety of others. So what happens when we don't mind, don't pay attention to those gaps? We go on automatic and do things that we later regret. And so the second gap that I am referring to is a gap between a stimulus and our reaction. What that a stimulus could be is anything that would trigger us. It could be seeing somebody doing something, hearing somebody saying something. So what happens when we don't mind that gap between a stimulus and a reaction is that we go on automatic. We are triggered. The force of our habitual tendencies, the force of the affliction comes rampant in our mind, and before we know it, we're engaging in some behavior, in some action, in some reaction that we're later going to regret, that we're going to feel bad about, and that's going to create some negative karma for ourselves. So Shantideva, who was very wise and whom we've been studying now for a couple of years, did say, and this is one of my favorite stanzas from A Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life, he said, "When just as I am about to act, I see that my mind is tainted with a defilement." So a defilement is an affliction, could be anger, jealousy, attachment, etc. When there is that coming up in our mind, at that time, I should remain unmovable, like a piece of wood. How many times have you remained unmovable, like a piece of wood, when faced with a stimulus that you don't have the power to ignore, that you don't have the power to handle or address in a positive, in a wise, in a calm way? How many times? It is very hard to do. And this is my experience as well. It's very hard to remain in this state of a wooden vessel. And so what is the reaction? So what is this process that I have observed in my mind when faced with a challenging stimuli? Mm-hmm. So the first, of course, is the habitual reaction. Trigger, boom, explosion. No no way to distinguish whatsoever what's coming on in my mind, or what's the affliction that's being triggered, or even, any idea as to the explosion that is coming up. It's just stimulus, boom, reaction, explosion. That's kind of the first level. Then there's a second level. By this time, of course, since we're all practitioners, we probably know that engaging in this automatic process of stimulus bad reaction is really not conducive. And so, if you are like me, you're trying to figure out, okay, what are my triggers? And you're trying to figure out, how do I avoid this explosion? And so you watch yourself just like I do, watch myself. Invariably, however, the trigger comes, but because I'm watching myself, now I get to watch myself in Technicolor with this explosion. And still not able to hold it back. But I get to watch myself. Oh, here I go. Yes, but yeah. Back to same old, same old. And then it's like, how do I put my words back in my mouth? No way. Now I have to apologize. Now I have to do some other jumps and skips in order to try to redress what I just did or said. That's another part of the process. And then if you are like me, you might have gone a step beyond that, and now you're faced with a trigger. But this time, you don't have a big explosion. This time, you're really, really working on holding it in, and you're thinking, I got it, and there it comes. It's very subtle, but it comes like, you're really trying to build this wall of wood. I am not going to do it. And then, just like as you're trying to relax into it, whoop, it comes out anyway. That's my process. But, I am embarking on a new project. And this new project is all about building that gap. And yesterday, during our nonviolence communication class, we talked about, the possibility of saying to the person that we're engaged with in a difficult interaction, we can say, can we wait until tomorrow or another day when we can both address this in a more calm way, in a wiser way? Well, you know what? At least for me, that hasn't worked right like that, because of this issue of that immediate reaction. So my project is to build this gap, but to build that gap before I am triggered. We all have a number of exchanges during the day. Somebody comes and asks a question. It could be the most simple of questions. Build the gap. Somebody asks a question. I don't have to respond right away, because if I respond right away, I am building that, I am perpetuating that same mechanisms. Here's a stimulus, there I go. Except that in this case, of course, it could be a completely neutral stimulus, or it could be even a positive stimulus, but I'm still engaging that same habitual response, no gap. But if somebody comes and asks a question and I wait, even in light of a good interaction, this is something good. When they're asking me, can you please tell me where's the pencil? I stop. I may know where the pencil is, but I stop. I breathe. I count 1, 2, 3. I imagine what's the nicest, kindest way to show this person where that pencil is. And then I reply, the pencil is over there. And I pat myself in the back, yay. But there are some problems with that scenario. Because as I'm over here trying to build my gap, the other person is over there saying, when is she going to respond to me? Come on, it's just a question. Where's the pencil? Can you tell me right now, because I have to go do this or I have to go do that? I don't have 10 minutes to wait until you decide to answer my question. So we have to be able to cope with the other person's impatience. So yeah, Now you're getting 2 for the price of 1. And so this building the gap, when I am not triggered, really gives me some hope that if I can do this in the most calm and the most conducive of situations, that I can build my internal strength to be able to do it when I'm triggered, when I'm not so resourced. And maybe someday I can say to the person I'm having a difficult interaction with, okay, can we talk about this another time? So that's my project. And I'm asking all of you to help me with that. So when you ask the question and you see me taking a long time to answer, you can tell, she's building the gap. So let's mind the gap for safety.